My name's Logan Price, 34, product engineer, early morning runner, and the kind of guy who actually reads the warranty card. I married Sienna Hart because, from the first night we met, she made rooms brighter. She wore a sunrise orange dress to a winter engagement party in downtown Portland, and somehow made it look like the dress code had been set around her. She laughed from the belly, asked real questions, and remembered the answers. We dated for 2 years, then did the courthouse, the vows, the cake, and the keys to a modest condo overlooking the river. For a while, we felt easy. Tidy kitchen, shared playlists, Sunday hikes, kiss on the forehead easy. Then Derek Wolfe started arriving by notification before he ever showed up in person. He was the college best friend, a name from back when Sienna did internships, slept 3 hours a night, and lived on fizzy water and ambition. At first, it was harmless. Good morning, text, a funny meme, a goofy selfie from a job site he claimed was a mess. But the messages didn't end when our mornings did. They slithered into lunch and lingered past dinner. If I told a story, she'd smile. If his name popped up on her phone, she'd glow. Our routines turned into a triangle no one voted for. I'd make pour-over coffee at 6 a.m. like always. She'd do sunrise yoga. I'd head to stand-up while she answered emails from wedding clients. Sienna's a planner with an eye for details and an instinct for drama-free timelines. On paper, we were a fit. 2 planners, 2 list makers, 2 people who liked the quiet success of a day well spent. But the quiet started getting interrupted by a laugh that wasn't for me. A rooftop birthday dinner should have been a reset. 10 of Sienna's old friends under string lights. The scent of rosemary and city air. Glasses clinking. Derek arrived last. Button down open at the throat. Jacket tailored a little too perfectly. The confident, casual posture of a man who's always being watched and never minded it. Sienna didn't just stand to greet him. She launched into him. Arms around his neck. Kiss to the cheek, that laugh. He sat between us like a dealer drops a card. Smooth, inevitable. He told stories like he'd rented the night. When he cracked a joke, Sienna touched his sleeve as if the fabric itself was funny. Then he turned to me, plenty loud. Logan, man, are you always this quiet or just buffering? The table laughed. I sipped water. Sienna didn't defend me. She didn't even notice. On the drive home, I kept it clean. Why'd you let him sit in the middle? You didn't say anything, she replied, like I'd missed a memo. I shouldn't have to. I'm your husband. She rolled the window down and watched the city blur by. You used to be fun. I booked us a cabin the next weekend. No TV, lousy cell service, a fireplace that smoked if you didn't show it respect. She said yes, even picked a novel. Friday morning, I was loading the trunk when she came out hugging her phone like it needed protection. Logan, I might need to push to tomorrow. Derek's sister is having a crisis, and he's not okay. He wasn't okay a lot. We've been planning this for weeks, I said, speaking slowly so the moment could feel its full weight. He can survive without you for 48 hours. He's my best friend, and I'm your husband. Her eyes sharpened. Don't make me choose. The truth spilled out of her as if it had always been waiting. If you make me choose, I'll choose him. It was an oddly gentle kind of breaking. Nothing crashed. The wind didn't even change. I pulled her bag from the trunk and set it by the door. She stared like the scene was wrong. What are you doing? You don't have to choose, I said, voice steady even as my chest went heavy. I'm making a choice for both of us. I drove to my sister's. Maddie Price is a therapist with a home that smells like cinnamon and boundaries. She put a mug of coffee in my hands, pointed to the guest room, and let me sleep 13 hours. On Sunday, I told her everything. The rooftop laughter, the do not disturb that never got used, the cabin that became a battlefield, the sentence that couldn't be unsaid. Maddie listened, then said, if you want clarity, find a truth that isn't curated. Find someone Derek doesn't perform for. Clarity. I could use that. I started with a name Derek had once tossed into a story like an afterthought. A former roommate, Noah Beckett, who'd moved across the river and was apparently too intense. I found Noah on social media. Photographer, street scenes, captions that sounded like journal entries. I sent a message. You don't know me. I'm married to Sienna Hart. She's close to Derek. I'm trying to understand who he is when nobody's clapping. Noah answered in under an hour. Me? We sat in a diner that still believed in jukeboxes. Noah didn't waste time. Derek's favorite trick is empathy with an agenda, he said. He spots couples where the woman is already carrying more than her share, then becomes the safe place. It feels like comfort. It's courtship in the clothing of friendship. He told me stories. Different cities, same choreography. Seemingly thoughtful messages at 6 a.m. Did you sleep okay? Daily check-ins disguised as emotional labor. The well-timed gift that says, I see you. The late-night Vince sessions that blur boundaries. The perfectly calibrated shoulder to lean on. Then, when the relationship is wobbly, when the boyfriend gets frustrated with the constant third person in the room, Dara plants his flag. You deserve better. Translation, you deserve me. He waits. He's patient. Noah said, like he was describing weather. And when the door opens, he acts like fate carved it. Then, this part matters. He gets bored until the next rescue. I drove home in silence. Sienna was on the couch scrolling. Back already? She asked, as if nothing was aflame. What does Derek say about me when I'm not in the room? I asked. I'm not doing this. I am. We need air. Space. Time to see clearly. She squinted like I'd changed languages. So you're giving up. I'm giving us room to tell the truth. I nodded at her phone. And the truth starts now. Call him. Put on speaker. Tell him we broke up. Sienna stared at me, attempting to measure the trap. This is childish. No games. Just clarity. If he's only a friend, his response will look like friendship. Her hand shook, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. She tapped his name. He answered fast, voice leaning forward. Hey you. Derek, she said, eyes on me. Logan and I broke up. Silence. Then, too much enthusiasm spilling through a smile I could hear. Finally. Sienna. Wow. Listen, I'm here. Whatever you need. You should get out of the city tonight. Come to the lake. You remember? Just us. We'll make a weekend of it. Sienna hung up. The apartment felt like a movie set after the extras go home. Same chairs. Nothing real. That's you're just a friend, I said. She blinked. That's not like him. It's exactly like him, I answered. You just didn't want to see it. His text flooded her screen. Assurances, plans, soft promises spoken like they were inevitable. She didn't answer. I didn't either. I took a bag to Maddie's and left my ring in a ceramic dish shaped like a leaf. A week without contact is long enough to hear your own footsteps again. I ran farther. Cooked actual breakfast. Slept like my phone didn't exist. Work got easier because it wasn't competing with the ache of being second. On Friday, Sienna showed up at my office building with the kind of face strangers step around. He left flowers on my car. He followed me to a client tasting. 15 calls this morning. Her voice trembled in a key I didn't recognize. I blocked him. I filed for a protective order. I told my sister. She's furious on my behalf. Something in me softened, even as the steel stayed. I'm glad you protected yourself, I said. Truly. I was wrong, she whispered. I wasn't trying to be right, I said. I was trying to be your husband. We met with a mediator the next week. It was quiet. No scenes. I didn't tell everyone. I didn't need an audience. We divided furniture like grown-ups. We signed papers that had our names spelled perfectly. She sent one final text. Thank you for the grace I didn't give back. I'm sorry. She moved across town into a place with light floors and too many windows. Derek kept trying to re-enter like a draft under a door. When he realized he'd been shut out, he got performative, cryptic posts about the real ones coming back, photos from old nights with captions that pretended time was a loop. Meanwhile, I practiced life as a singular noun. I ran. I worked. I cooked for one and learned to enjoy the quiet sound a fork makes when it taps the plate in an empty kitchen. And in that quiet, something took shape. Not rage, not bitterness. A plan. Movies teach you revenge is loud. In real life, the strongest kind wears a suit and smiles politely. Mine would be 3 things. Truthful, lawful, undeniable. First, I collected public records, screenshots of posts where Derek positioned himself as the forever firefighter, always showing up to douse somebody else's flames. I kept it clean. Nothing hacked, nothing stolen, nothing you wouldn't show a judge. Second, I asked Noah for introductions to 2 women he'd mentioned without names. They were cautious. They had every right to be. We met in a coffee shop with no music. I told them why I was there. Not to humiliate, not to weaponize, but to map a pattern. They told me stories that sounded like photocopies of mine, with names and settings swapped out like variables in a formula. Their relief at being believed was its own indictment. Third, I booked a dinner I didn't name at a calm little bistro near the river. I invited 10 people who mattered to Sienna. Her sister, 2 close friends who'd once met Derek and called him charming, Maddie, Noah, and 2 of the women Derek had tangled in his web. I sent an agenda in a group text because clarity is a courtesy. We'll eat. We'll listen. We'll tell the truth without yelling. We'll go home and choose our next right thing. No one asked for drama. Everyone showed. Sienna arrived in a navy dress and the kind of makeup you wear when you want to look strong. She took the seat beside me without touching me, which was its own kind of respect. I didn't speechify. I told my story in 10 minutes, then turned it over. Noah outlined the pattern. Empathy as leverage, access as a tool, patience as strategy. The 2 women spoke softly, but didn't tremble. Sienna listened like she was taking a test she didn't know she'd been studying for. Halfway through, Derek texted Sienna. The name lit her screen. She placed the phone face down. That small act was a seismic redraw of a map. We ended the night with a sentence I'd rehearsed. If you need to forgive me for leaving, I understand. If you need to thank me for leaving, I'll understand that too. Sienna breathed out like she'd been holding air since the rooftop dinner. Thank you for leaving, she said, voice raw. I don't think you could have saved me any other way. Revenge wasn't the word for it, not yet. But something had flipped. The narrative, the gravity, the center of the room. A week later, I filed a civil suit in North Carolina, where we'd married and briefly lived before moving west. You may not know it, but some states still recognize alienation of affection, a cause of action that says, if somebody intentionally interferes with your marriage, there can be consequences measured not in bruises, but in bank statements. I didn't file to get rich. I filed because patterns don't change without cost. The internet says those suits are relics. Maybe, but relics still cut if you sharpen them. My attorney moved carefully. No spectacle, just discovery requests, documented patterns, timelines that lined up too neatly to be coincidence. We didn't need to prove betrayal in a bedroom. We only needed to prove deliberate interference in a bond. Derek's lawyers blustered, then sputtered, then asked quietly what it would take to make it end. My answer was simple. An admission that he targeted a marriage, a settlement that stings enough to be remembered, and a non-disparagement clause that includes no more cryptic posts about taking back what's yours. He signed. Money changed hands. The admission was short and lawyered, but it existed. That was the part that mattered. Not because I needed a trophy, because I wanted the next woman in his path to have a piece of paper she could wave like a flare. If you told me at the rooftop dinner that my strongest revenge would be a stapled packet of legal documents and a roomful of calm storytelling, I would have laughed. But there was quiet, lawful final. That's when Ava Monroe walked in, not into my life with a violin swell. She came into a running group I'd joined for the Saturday long loop. She had a relaxed stride and the habit of asking one more question than she answered. She didn't perform care. She practiced it. We ran. We stretched. We tried a new taco place where they remember your name by the second visit. We didn't rush. I didn't pretend I wasn't cauterized in places. She didn't ask me to be unburned. Sienna texted once. I'm in therapy. I know that's late. I'm sorry it's late. I answered. I'm glad you're going. We left it there. 2 people who used to share a bed, now sharing the simple respect of not ruining each other. The thing about people like Derek is they hate being uncast. He tried to reclaim the role, first with nostalgia, then with nonsense. Old photos resurfaced with captions about the one who got away. A podcaster friend gave him a mic, and he told a story where he was a misunderstood hero and I was a cold fish who never laughed. He said we were jealous of what naturally happens when 2 souls align. He left my name out. He didn't need to include it for everyone to hear it. Sienna's sister forwarded the episode. Do I respond? She asked me. No, I said. We already answered where it counts. But Derek didn't stop. He sent Sienna a letter, out of the blue, thick paper, fountain pen, arguing that my legal stunt was proof I was controlling and that Sienna and he were written in some kind of cosmic chalk. She took the letter to her therapist, then to her shredder. He tried one last stunt. He showed up at a charity gala where Sienna was working the timeline and, accidentally, bumped into her on the way to the dessert table. She told security without hesitation. A staffer escorted him to the sidewalk like he was any other guest who'd confused proximity with permission. If you need a picture of strong revenge from the husband, it wasn't me yelling in public or slashing tires in the night. It was this: a man whose patterns finally cost him, a woman who finally said the small, simple word no, and a quiet life on my side that moved forward without ever orbiting him again. Still, there was one final scene I hadn't planned, but when it came, I understood why it belonged. I was at Maddie's for Sunday dinner, the kind where her boyfriend grills chicken too long because conversation gets good. Maddie's friend group had been split about me leaving as early as I did. Some thought it was honorable, some thought it was premature. I never tried to convince anyone. But that night, one of the prematures asked if I could talk to her cousin. She's trapped in a Derek-type situation, she whispered. Same tactics, different name. We met in a library, because you speak softly in libraries, and abusive tactics hate soft strength. I didn't give her a speech. I asked questions. What happens when you say no? Who do you become when he's around? What would a boundary feel like in your body? At the end, I slid a copy of the settlement across the table, the parts one could legally share. Proof that patterns can be mapped, that stories can be documented, that you can make a consequence heavy enough to stop a door from swinging open again. Thank you, she said, fingertips on the paper like it might warm her. If he tries to rewrite the story, I'll have something that doesn't care how charming he sounds. Good, I said. Charm hates receipts. In case you're wondering, yes, Sienna dated someone new for a while. Not a Derek type. A quiet paramedic who wrote his own vows in pencil before he ever said them out loud. They didn't last forever, but they lasted honestly, which is a kind of success stories don't celebrate enough. As for me and Ava, we stayed slow. We built a rhythm that would bore anyone who needs chaos to feel alive. Sunday farmers markets. Weeknight dumplings. A weekend in a coastal town where the fog made the morning look like a promise you could keep. Late summer at the farmers market smells like peaches and decisions. Ava was comparing sunflowers, and I was arguing with a man about which tomatoes taste like childhood, when I heard my old name called in a voice I used to move toward. Logan. Sienna stood there in flats and a cotton dress, and the posture of someone who'd learned to take up less space when she wasn't sure she was invited. Time had changed her, not into a penitent statue, not into a villain turned saint, just into a person who knew, now, the inventory of her choices. You look good, she said, not flirting, not fishing, observing. Thank you, I answered. You too. She nodded toward Ava, who was now paying for a bouquet the size of a cheerful mistake. She seems steady. She is. We talked for a minute about unimportant things that are actually how people really live. The new bakery, Maddie's new rescue dog, the way the river looks different at sunrise after rain. Then Sienna took a breath you take before the last page. I think about that night, she said, when you asked me to call him. How quick he was. I tell my clients now, when they're picking vendors and overwhelmed, if something moves too fast to be examined, slow it down. If it hates being slowed, it's not safe. I wish I'd known that then. You know it now, I said. It wasn't absolution. It was simply true. Is there any chance we could ever? She stopped herself, shook her head gently, and finished better. No, that's the wrong ask. What I really want is to say thank you for leaving when you did. You taught me what consequences look like when they're not thrown like knives. You held up a mirror and walked away. I finally looked. Behind her, a kid dropped a plum and watched it roll into a storm drain. His mom squeezed his shoulder, told him it was okay, and handed him another. Even small losses deserve replacements. I hope you're happy, she said. I am. I told her because I was. I hope you are too. I'm learning how, she said. Slow. Ava came back, sunflowers turning the day brighter. She offered one to Sienna without knowing who she was, because she offers things to people like that. Sienna smiled, accepted the flower, and then, this is the part that surprised me, gave it back. It looks like it belongs with you, she told Ava, and then she looked at me and nodded, not goodbye, but good luck, and walked toward the honey stand. We walked to the river. The city moved the way it always does on a Saturday. Strollers, joggers, a saxophone nobody asked for. I told Ava the short version and then the shorter feeling. I used to think the opposite of betrayal was loyalty, I said. Maybe it's actually clarity. She threaded her fingers through mine. Clarity's a good hill to build a home on, she said. I've been thinking about revenge since the night Derek made a rooftop into a stage and I made my silence into a shield. I used to think revenge meant making the other person feel your pain. Now I think it means building a life where they can't reach the edges. It's setting a boundary and then making that boundary your address. A month later, Noah sent me a message. He moved. Different city. Smaller audience. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I went for a run before dawn and watched the river turn from slate to silver. When I got home, I made 2 cups of coffee, one for me and one for the woman who leaves notes on the fridge that say nothing poetic, just remember your lunch, which is its own kind of poem. Here's the part I want to hand you if you're reading this on a couch you bought together but don't know how to share anymore. If someone insists on being between you and your spouse, believe the geometry. If your instincts whisper and the room gets loud, excuse yourself to listen. If a pattern hates being named, name it twice. If it comes down to choosing, choose yourself and your future, and do it before you're forced to. As for the husband who wanted a strong revenge, he learned that the strongest kind doesn't thunder. It files. It documents. It invites the truth to dinner and lets it speak in complete sentences. It costs the right person, and then it leaves. When Sienna texted me months later, I'm engaged in a different way now. I'm engaged with my own life. I told her I was proud of her, and I meant it. I didn't need her to fail to stay right. I only needed my life to stop orbiting the version of me who would have stayed just to win a competition I never wanted to enter. I'm not a cautionary tale or a hero. I'm a man who learned the power of receipts and the softness of a Saturday that belongs to nobody who doesn't earn it. The house is quiet. The coffee's hot. The phone is face down and irrelevant. The woman across the table smiles without checking if anyone else saw it. That's the whole secret right there. Not being first, not being chosen over someone else, being the only person in the room who gets a vote in your own piece.